Trump just got blindsided, and this might be the biggest betrayal of his entire political career. Senators, yes, Republican senators, are secretly siding with Democrats in a lethal impeachment strike that could bring down his second term. Chaos is exploding inside the GOP. Power is collapsing. Trump's team didn't even see it coming. They thought they controlled the Senate, but now the knives are out. Leaked reports say new evidence, new testimonies, and even bribes are being whispered behind closed doors. The party is tearing itself apart on live TV, and what happens next could end Trump's presidency for good.
Put people through the pain that they're now in, and yet not achieve the result that you're going for, which is some deal on the ACA, to me just didn't make sense.
There was no guarantee we would ever get to an ACA solution. Now we've got robust SNAP funding and a guaranteed vote, not a guaranteed outcome, but a guaranteed vote on ACA tax credit.
In just a few hours, we could be one step closer to ending the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. So 8 Senate Democrats broke away from the rest of the party last night, cutting a deal with Senate Republicans. A final Senate vote could happen today as flight cancellations pile up nationwide and food benefits hang in the balance for millions of Americans. The deal would reopen the government in exchange for a future vote on extending Affordable Care Act subsidies. Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised that vote will happen by mid-December. It also reverses federal layoffs made during the shutdown and funds the government through the end of January. Breakaway Democratic caucus members defended their vote late last night.
All right, let's slow down, breathe, and talk this through like adults who actually care about the country. Tonight isn't about the latest viral headline or a dopamine hit from doom scrolling. It's about whether the rule of law is still stronger than the politics of intimidation. It's about whether a president, any president, can place himself above the institutions that keep 330 million people from being shoved around by one man's temper. And yes, it's about Donald Trump, his movement, and a Republican Party that can't decide whether to be a conservative party or a personality cult. Here's the lay of the land. We've got formal impeachment articles on the table this term, real filings, not talk radio fodder. We've also got the living memory of 7 Republican senators who once voted to convict Trump after January 6th, and a Senate that can still hit 60 votes when real-life consequences, missed paychecks, stalled flights, empty fridges, force politics to bend to reality. Those are 2 threads of the same story. Accountability isn't dead, but it doesn't win by shouting. It wins when the receipts pile up and the pressure from ordinary people becomes impossible to ignore. Let's be straight about what blindsided really means. It doesn't mean Trump woke up one morning and the deep state flipped the switch. It means a slow, grinding accumulation of actions. Attempts to bully institutions, blur legal lines, and cash political chips that eventually hits a wall. Sometimes that wall is a judge who still reads the Constitution. Sometimes it's a Senate threshold that won't crumble to a hashtag. Sometimes it's members of his own party who decide they won't carry water for one more outrage because their voters are sending a different message. We just want the government to work.
Joining me now is Steph Kite, a politics reporter with Axios. Just give us a sense of what the latest is right now. What will happen today?
Well, right now, the biggest question is whether there's going to be unanimous agreement in the Senate to move forward on this final vote on this package. Last night was a huge breakthrough, the first time that there were enough Democratic votes to even move forward with some kind of a bipartisan deal, but they still have to pass that final passage vote. And this could drag on for a couple days. All eyes are on Senator Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky.
And that, by the way, is the wound Trumpism never heals, the gap between spectacle and governance. It can dominate an outrage cycle. It struggles to run a country. The longer this goes on, the more Republican senators feel the vise tighten. On one side, a base trained to treat compromise as betrayal and facts as enemy propaganda. On the other, the arithmetic of governing, budgets due, services collapsing, courts that still issue orders. Throw impeachment into that cauldron and you see what we're seeing now. Republicans quietly gauging whether sticking with Trump is survivable in the medium term. Not because they grew a conscience overnight, but because consequences finally outweigh fear. Let me talk to the people who are exhausted, and I get it. You've heard accountability is coming for years. You've watched investigations stack up like unread emails. You've seen theatrics masquerade as oversight, and oversight dismissed as a witch hunt. You're asking, why should this time be different? My answer is boring, and it's the only one that works. Because institutions, when pushed long enough, tend to defend themselves. Filings, votes, subpoenas, court calendars, floor procedures. These are the slow gears. They grind, and when they do, it looks less like a fireworks show and more like gravity. Nothing happens, then something moves that cannot be easily moved back. That's why all the lethal strike and deadly betrayal headline making isn't the story. The story is senators who have to put their names on votes in daylight with cameras and scorecards and angry base voters waiting outside. The story is Republicans remembering that in 2021, 7 of their colleagues didn't just criticize Trump. They crossed the Rubicon and said it out loud. That precedent lives rent-free in the chamber. It proves the unthinkable is thinkable. And once something is thinkable in Washington, it is, under the right pressure, doable. Let's set the emotional tone correctly. This isn't a parade, it's triage. We're not cheering that impeachment exists. We're lamenting why it's needed. We're not celebrating that a shutdown had to be broken by a 60-40 vote. We're asking why Americans were used as bargaining chips at all. But the thread tying these moments together is simple and patriotic. A constitutional system that still resists the idea of one unaccountable man. Every time that resistance shows up, on the Senate floor, in a committee filing, in a courtroom, it sends the same message. The law is not a suggestion. Now, motives. Yes, Democrats want accountability. Yes, some Republicans want Trumpism without Trump, which is like wanting the fire without the smoke. Yes, there are career calculations, donor pressures, and pollsters whispering suburbs, suburbs, suburbs into every conversation. But the why is less important than the what. If the behavior crosses lines, obstruction, abuse of power, corrupt self-dealing, the mechanism exists to respond. That's the point of impeachment. It is not a policy veto. It is a constitutional remedy for conduct that threatens the system itself. And that's exactly why the rhetoric from the MAGA side always tries to redefine it as a coup or election nullification, because they know the minute we talk about the conduct instead of the spin, the case gets real. There's also a propaganda ecosystem we have to name. The playbook is familiar. Declare total victory, cry total persecution, and do both on the same day. Flood the zone with scandal-adjacent noise. Make your supporters feel like fact-checking is treason and patience is surrender. That only works if we let adrenaline set the agenda. So don't. When claims surface, Republican senators are lining up to impeach. Treat them as claims. Ask for the roll call, the go bill list, the hearing calendar. If the story is true, it will leave paperwork. Real moves leave paper. That's your compass. What about the argument that voters already decided, let them govern? It misunderstands both elections and the presidency. Elections seat a president. They don't sanctify conduct. The oath doesn't say, I won, therefore I can. It says, I swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. When actions break that oath, when pressure is applied to subvert oversight, to punish critics using government power, to obstruct legitimate inquiry, elections do not launder the wrongdoing. Institutions exist precisely for the post-election period, when temptation to abuse power is highest and political oxygen is scarce. And listen, there is real risk here. If impeachment proceeds and fails in the Senate, Trump will claim total exoneration and weaponize it. If it proceeds and succeeds, the backlash on the right could be volcanic, and Republicans who vote for it will likely be hunted in primaries. If it stalls, cynicism deepens and the message becomes, the powerful always skate. There's no painless path. The cure for that isn't clever messaging, it's steadiness. Explain the charges clearly. Keep the scope tight. Show the evidence, then follow the evidence. No melodrama, no mission creep. People can smell when a process is serious, and they reward seriousness even if they disagree with the outcome. We should also talk about fear. Not their fear, yours. The fear that nothing matters, that every shock fades, that we are trapped in a never-ending series of last straws with no consequences. Here's what I know. Consequences often look invisible until the day they become obvious. A judge's patience runs out. A donor's tolerance dries up. A senator's internal poll flits from barely safe to dead on arrival. A staffer who kept quiet decides to talk. Authoritarians count on fatigue. Democracies count on accumulation. That's why you keep going. Not because one hearing saves the republic, but because a chain of hearings, filings, votes, and verdicts can. Now, the Republican Civil War, it's not a metaphor, it's a daily calculation. Do you chain your career to a leader mired in investigations and grievance politics? Or do you risk the wrath of a base that treats apostasy as unforgivable? Trump knows the leverage points and pulls them hard. Primary threats, public humiliation, pressure on state parties. But leverage weakens when outcomes worsen. Failures pile up. Independents peel away. Donors hedge. Even safe-seat senators can read a trend line. And once a few members move, cover grows for others to follow. We watched that dynamic in 2021. The difference now is that there's no let the next election decide escape hatch. This is the last term. The accountability window is open now, or it isn't at all. Don't sleep on the governance angle either. When government actually functions, when SNAP turns back on, when paychecks land, when airports stop stacking delays, the strongman brand loses altitude. Because the sales pitch of chaos is that only the strongman can fix it. But functioning institutions fix it better, faster, with fewer casualties. That's why you saw a coalition form around ending the shutdown, despite White House pressure, to push harder, break more norms, and demand the moon. At some point, the country's basic machinery, schools, clinics, safety nets, puts a clock on the theater. When that clock runs out, the performative stuff looks small. There's also a moral point we shouldn't mute. Public office is not a personal shield, it's service. The idea that loyalty to one man supersedes loyalty to the Constitution isn't conservatism, it's cultism. The right used to teach that with pride. If Republican senators rediscover it now, out of principle or out of self-preservation, I can live with the mixed motives. The vote counts the same. So where does this go? If impeachment articles advance, the question for Senate Republicans won't be, do you like Democrats? It will be, are the facts as presented under oath disqualifying? That's it. Strip away the noise about the media and the deep state and the latest set of conspiratorial acronyms. Did the president do what is alleged? Does it meet the standard? If yes, then remove. If no, then don't. The trap is to treat it as a referendum on your political tribe. It isn't. It's a test of whether you think the presidency has limits. To viewers who lean conservative and are still with me, thank you. Ask yourself this. If a future Democrat did all the things you've watched Trump do, the pressure campaigns, the norm breaking, the flood of disinformation, would you be okay saying, let the voters sort it out in 4 years? Would you shrug at subpoenas blown off and agencies turned into political weapons? If the answer is no, then your standard isn't partisan, it's constitutional. Hold it. And to the pro-democracy majority, left, center, old school conservatives who still like the Bill of Rights, stay disciplined. This is not about humiliation or revenge. It's about boundaries. Boundaries drawn with process, proof, and persistence. No matter how loudly the outrage machine screams witch hunt, it cannot invert the burden of proof if you keep putting the evidence on the table and walking people through it calmly. One more thing. The most demoralizing lie in our politics is that nothing you do matters. It's the lie that keeps you off the phone with your representative, out of town halls, and away from local organizing where national tides are shaped. The truth is that senators measure temperature. They see letters, calls, district meetings, polling crosstabs. They can tell who's energized and who's checked out. If you want them to take the risk that the Constitution asks of them, make them feel less alone. Give them a constituency for courage. We'll end here. The through line is simple: rule of law versus impunity. Every time the country chooses the former, by passing a real budget instead of indulging a tantrum, by filing articles rather than posting memes, by insisting on testimony under oath rather than accepting spin, we keep the promise of this place alive. A democracy that can still correct itself, however slowly and imperfectly, is a democracy worth the patience this moment demands. So, no theatrics for me tonight, no magic predictions, just a quiet insistence on the basics. If the evidence warrants impeachment, proceed. If it reaches the Senate, judge it on the facts. If it falls short, say so and keep governing. If it passes, accept the costs because the Constitution is not a mood ring, it's a contract. Either way, the work of a citizen remains the same. Show up, pay attention, and refuse to be numbed into silence. That's how the guardrails hold. That's how power gets reminded it serves the public, not the other way around. And that's how we make sure one man's appetite for impunity never outruns a nation's commitment to the law.